Good morning, children. Hope all of you are very good. And today we will be discussing about two new ratios, that is proprietary ratio and total assets to debt ratio. But before starting our topic, one information I just want to give, that be at home, whatever instructions given by the government, follow that strictly and be safe. And with this expectation that you people are doing the studies very nicely, and all of you, I know that all of you are loaded with huge work of studies, so carry on with this, and this way we can pass on these 21 days properly and utilize it properly. Okay, so let's start our topic with proprietary ratio. Now proprietary ratio means what? This ratio analyzes the proportion of owner's fund in total assets of a company. Means what is the amount invested by the owner himself in purchasing the total assets. That is called proprietary ratio. ओनर ने कितना पैसा लगाया है टोटल एसेट्स को खरीदने के लिए, दैट इज कॉल्ड proprietary ratio. Higher proprietary ratio shows more security of long-term creditors. Means if owner's contribution is high in total assets, that means creditors are secured. Why? Because creditors will know that, like suppose for example 80% is the proprietary ratio. It means of the total assets 80% is given by owner and remaining 20% is borrowed from the creditors in terms of long-term loan. That means creditors are highly secured. creditors को कोई टेंशन नहीं है कि हमारा पैसा वापस नहीं आएगा. ऑलरेडी ओनर का 80% पैसा किस में लगा हुआ है? टोटल एसेट्स में. सो दैट्स वाई ओनर्स आर हाईली सेफ एंड सिक्योर. क्रेडिटर्स आर हाईली सेफ एंड सिक्योर. ओके, सो दैट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ proprietary ratio. Now the formula of proprietary ratio is what? Proprietor's fund upon total assets. Because we are calculating that what is the percentage or proportion of owner's fund in total assets. What is the proportion of owner's fund or proprietor's fund in total assets? So that's why it is proprietor's fund upon total assets. Now proprietor funds means shareholders fund, which we already studied. That shareholders fund include what? It includes share capital and reserves and surplus. So that is the same thing. Now regarding total assets, what things should not be considered in total assets? So total assets includes what? Non-current assets, current assets. Now in that non-current assets, one thing comes is non-trade investments and fictitious assets. So these two things should not be considered. Which one? Non-trade investments and fictitious assets. Now why non-trade investments are not considered? See, first of all, the meaning of trade investment and non-trade investment. Trade investment means the investment made for business operations, like a company purchase shares or debentures of other company to promote or expand their business. Like Ratan Tata has purchased Chorus. So he purchased 70% of the shares of Chorus just to gain the ownership. That means that is called trade investment. That is for the expansion of his business. Non-trade investments, these investments are made for long-term capital appreciation. Means surplus money is invested in shares of any company just for a speculative gain. What is speculative gain? प्राइस कम था, शेयर्स खरीद लिया, प्राइस बढ़ गया, शेयर्स बेच दिया. Our purpose is not this thing, that to gain some control over the company. Generally, non-trade investments are also called as portfolio investments. What is it called? Portfolio investment. And trade investments are called direct investments. Okay, I think you people have studied or you will be studying this thing in economics. Direct investment and portfolio investment. So non-trade is not related to your business. So that's why non-trade investments are excluded from total assets. It is not counted. It is not the part of your capital. Fictitious assets are generally discount to be written off on shares, debentures, or you can say any other advertisement, deferred revenue, advertisement expenses are there. They are also not the part of capital employed, so they are also to be subtracted from total assets. Deferred revenue expenditure. Usually this thing comes in fictitious assets. Okay, so this is the formula: proprietor's fund upon total assets. This can be expressed in pure form of ratio, or it can also be expressed in terms of percentage. Now next, that is the meaning of trade investments and non-trade investment. Now coming to the calculation of total assets, that we discussed from asset side. Now from the liability side, how the total assets can be calculated. Total assets is also equal to total liability. You know that total of asset in balance sheet is always equal to total of liability. Now from liability side, what are the major three main heads? One is shareholder fund, other one is your non-current liability, and third one is your current liability. So non-current liability plus current liability, it is equal to what? Total debt. So that's why shareholder fund plus total debt gives you what? Total liability. But again the same thing, because in the total of assets or in total of liability, value of non-trade investments and the value of fictitious assets is included. So again from liability side also we have to subtract the value of non-trade investment and fictitious assets. That means it is common to subtract non-trade investment and fictitious assets both from asset side as well as from the liability side. So from liability side also you can calculate the value of liabilities through subtracting your non-trade investments and fictitious assets. Okay. Now let's come to a numerical part of this total, how to calculate this ratio. One question is framed here. So we will see this question and we'll try to understand that how the ratio is to be calculated. The question given is, capital employed of business is how much? 40 lakh. Shareholders fund 24 lakh. And current liability is how much? 4 lakh 80,000. Now from these three things I have to calculate proprietary ratio. First I am writing the formula of proprietary ratio. Proprietary ratio is equal to proprietor's fund or shareholders fund divided by total assets. Now proprietor funds is directly given here, that is shareholders funds, that is the meaning of proprietor's fund. So that is directly given. Next one is your total assets, calculation of total assets. How to calculate that? Now see in the question, no item of asset is given here. None of the item of asset is given. So we have to calculate the total assets through liability side. Now from liability side, total assets is equal to what? Total of liability. And total of liability includes shareholders fund plus non-current liability and plus current liability. Now non-current liability and current liability, that will give you total debt. Now nothing is given regarding total debt here. Only current liability is given, shareholders fund is given. Non-current liability is missing. So capital employed is what? Capital employed is the sum of shareholders fund and non-current liability. That is equal to your capital employed. So with this capital employed, if I add current liability, as we already studied, current liability plus capital employed will give you what? Total liability. So your total liability will be equal to capital employed 40 lakh plus current liability how much? 4 lakh 80,000. So this total is how much? 44 lakh 80,000. So this is your total assets or total liability. So we want total assets. Then put the formula of proprietary ratio. So proprietary ratio is equal to proprietor's fund, that is shareholders fund, given 24 lakh upon total assets how much? 44 lakh 80,000. So this will be your 0.53:1. So in this way we will calculate proprietary ratio of this question. Okay. One more question is there. Now in this question, see, again we are calculating what? Proprietary ratio. So they have given you total debt and shareholders fund, reserve and surplus, current assets, working capital. Now one thing is important, that whenever shareholders fund is given, reserve and surplus should not be considered, because shareholder fund itself includes what? Share capital and reserves and surplus. So reserve and surplus will not be considered. So total debt will be, for proprietary ratio, again I am writing the formula. Proprietary ratio is proprietor's fund or shareholders fund upon total assets. Same thing, shareholders fund is given in the question, that is 12 lakh. 12 lakh it is given. But again, total assets, no item of assets is given except this current assets, which is not sufficient. So we'll calculate through what? Liabilities. So now total of liability is equal to, again same thing, shareholders fund plus non-current liability plus current liability. As we all know that non-current liability plus current liability is equal to what? It is equal to total debt. That means total debt plus shareholders fund. When I add, that will give you total liability. So it is 30 lakh. 30 lakh plus shareholders fund how much? 12 lakh. So it will be 42 lakh. So then proprietary ratio is equal to proprietors fund how much? 12 lakh upon 42 lakh. So 12 lakh by 42 lakh, that will give you 0.28:1. Okay, so in this way we will calculate what? This total proprietors fund and total assets. These are the typical kind of questions which we have to solve. Now coming to the next category of ratio, solvency ratio, that is your total assets to debt ratio. So total assets to debt ratio is. Now what is the meaning of total assets to debt ratio and what is the purpose of this ratio? This ratio analyzes the proportion of total assets financed with long term debt. Means कितना उधार लेके मैंने टोटल एसेट्स एक्वायर किया है, कितना परसेंट उधारी का है, व्हाट इज द प्रपोर्शन ऑफ द लॉन्ग टर्म डेट which is utilized for purchasing this total assets. Means this ratio is helpful in understanding the debt paying capacity, long term debt paying capacity of the company. What we are analyzing that how much of the total asset is financed with long term debt. So it fixes the margin of safety for creditors. How much safe the creditor's amount is with the company, that thing is checked with total assets to debt ratio. Higher ratio indicates that less loan is taken for acquiring the asset, which shows higher ratio means it is better for long term creditors security, that they are it is enough guarantee by a company that they will be able to repay their loans of the creditors. And same with the proprietary ratio also. Higher proprietary ratio is always better. Okay, and higher total assets to debt ratio is always better. Coming to the formula of this ratio. So as per the name, total assets upon debt. Debt means non-current liability. Okay, debt or non-current liability. So the formula is total assets upon debt. Total assets to debt ratio. So that means total assets upon debt. Okay, so this is the formula of total assets to debt ratio. So again I will take the same examples. In the same question we will calculate what? Now we will calculate total assets to debt ratio. Okay. So total assets already we calculated here, that total assets with the liability approach, that is capital employed plus current liability, that has given you the value of total assets. So the value of total assets we already calculated, that is 44,80,000. Now the question is to calculate what? Debt. Now is long term debt directly given in the question? Long term debt is directly not given in the question. Now we have to use the formula of capital employed. So capital employed, we know that capital employed is equal to what? Capital employed is shareholders fund plus non-current liability. The structure of balance sheet, remember that. So capital employed is given and shareholders fund is given in the question. So by putting these two, we'll calculate what? We'll calculate what? Your non-current liability. So non-current liability, which is also called as debt. So debt. So capital employed is given how much? 40 lakh and shareholder fund is given how much? 24 lakh. So 40 lakh minus 24 lakh. So this is how much? 16 lakh. So this value of debt we calculated. So formula of total assets to debt ratio, that is total assets upon long term debt. So total assets is how much? 44,80,000 and debt how much? 16 lakh. So by dividing these two, calculate the value of total assets to debt ratio, that is 2.8:1. Okay, so in this type we will calculate what value of total assets to debt ratio. So the second example is again the same, and from this example again we'll calculate what total assets to debt ratio. Okay, now for the question total assets already we have calculated in this question, that is shareholders fund. Along with that we have added total debt. So the value of total assets or your total liability will be equal to 42 lakh. So I'm writing here that the total assets is equal to how much? 42 lakh. So here value of total assets. Next is to calculate what? Debt. Now see, question in this question only total debt is given. Don't think that total debt is the debt. No. Total debt is what? Total debt is a sum of non-current liabilities and current liabilities. So in this question, to calculate non-current liability, so just a minute, I am writing here. Total debt is equal to non-current liability plus current liability. Is non-current liability given in the question? Non-current liability we have to calculate, sorry. Is current liability given? Current liability is not given. So to calculate current liability, what we will do now? We will use the formula of working capital, because current asset is given. See the level of question. Working capital, from that we will calculate what? Current liabilities. Okay, so see here, so I'm writing here that working capital is equal to CA minus CL. CA minus CL. So working capital is given how much? 9 lakh. Working capital is given 9 lakh. CA, current assets they have given. Yes, current asset is how much? Current asset is 15 lakh. So I'm writing the value of current assets here, 15 lakh minus current liability. So shifting the current liability to that side, 15 lakh minus 9 lakh. Okay, this 9 lakh will transfer to this side and it will become negative. So the value of current liability is how much? 6 lakh. The value of current liability is how much? 6 lakh. Now we have the value of current liabilities and total debt. We have the value of total current liability and total debt. So now we can calculate easily this non-current liabilities. Okay. So total debt is given how much? Total debt is 30 lakh. So total debt I am writing here, total debt 30 lakh is equal to non-current liabilities, calculate, plus current liabilities how much? 6 lakh. We calculated current liability is 6 lakh. So non-current liability is what? Debt. So it will be difference 30 lakh minus 30 lakh minus 6 lakh minus 6 lakh. So the answer will be what? Your answer will be now 24 lakh. So answer of this one is 24 lakh. Okay, 24 lakh. That is non-current liability. Now finally the formula of total assets to debt ratio. Total assets 42 lakh upon debt, that is non-current liability how much? 24 lakh. So your answer will 1.75:1. Okay, so these questions are, you can say, help you to recall your formulas again. This question and the second question what we solved here is this one. Okay, this question will help you in recalling your formula and help to brainstorm to calculate the things. So thank you, and some of the questions in PDF form I will attach in my description link. You can obtain it from there. Okay, take care.